The opulent atmosphere of the Blackwood Manor offered no welcome to Elara Finch. She was dismissed the moment she stepped into the will reading. Her attire, a grey linen dress, a faded cardigan and quiet flats, was deliberately simple, just enough to draw sneers across a room full of polished heirs, whose grins were too sharp to be sincere. The manor, which sprawled across a wooded hill, its stone walls and iron gates a fortress against the world, housed the most ambitious members of the late Victor Caspian Vance's circle. Inside, the grand hall smelled of old money, polished oak, leather, and the faint tang of roses from vases that cost more than most people's rent. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, catching the April light and scattering it across a crowd of 42 relatives, investors, advisors, and assistants. Every person was dressed to claim their stake in Victor Vance's empire. Tailored suits, silk dresses, and diamonds that winked with every gesture signaled their practiced intent. They milled about sipping champagne, their condolences as rehearsed as their smiles. Elara slipped in quietly, her flats silent on the marble floor. She chose the back corner near a tall window that framed the misty hills outside. Her dress was simple, loose enough to move in, the grey fabric soft from years of wear. Her cardigan, a pale blue that had seen better days, hung slightly off one shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled into a low bun, with a few strands loose framing a face that needed no makeup to hold its own. With high cheekbones and hazel eyes that saw everything, her lips stayed closed when others would have snapped back. At 36, Elara was beautiful in a way that didn't shout but lingered like a melody you couldn't forget. The mockery began instantly. Sterling Vance, Victor's second cousin, a man in a gold tie who was the first to speak, half laughing, half mocking, leaned against a mahogany table, his expensive Rolex catching the light. "Seriously, who let the cleaning staff in?" he asked. His voice carried deliberate, drawing chuckles from a cluster of cousins nearby. A woman in a crimson dress, Sabrina Vance, Sterling's sister, tossed her hair and added, "Maybe she's here to dust the will before it's read." More laughter, sharp and brittle like glass breaking across the room, followed her spiteful comment. A younger woman, Penelope Hayes, a niece with a tech startup and a TikTok following, nudged her friend Elise. "Bet she's one of his charity cases," Penelope whispered loud enough for Elara to hear. "Or a mistress he forgot about. Look at her bag like she's carrying her lunch." Elise snickered, snapping a discreet photo with her phone, murmuring, "This is going on my story. #Thorn will flop." Penelope's smirk grew as she typed a caption for the photo she'd just taken of Elara. "Found Victor's charity case crashing the will reading. Guess she thinks thrift store chic gets her $1 billion, she said aloud, ensuring Elara heard every word. The crowd around her laughed, some pulling out their own phones to like and share the post, which was already gaining traction online. Comments flooded in, strangers calling Elara a nobody and desperate, their words a digital pylon that echoed the room's disdain. Elara stood motionless, her hazel eyes catching the glow of Penelope's screen, but she didn't speak or flinch. Her silence seemed to fuel their glee, as if her composure was a challenge they had to break. Elise, Penelope's friend, leaned in, her voice dripping with pity. "Poor thing doesn't even know she's a meme now." The laughter swelled, a chorus of cruelty that painted Elara as less than human, her dignity a target for their amusement. Elara's fingers tightened briefly on her cloth bag, a plain thing stitched with care, not a logo in sight. She didn't acknowledge the taunts or barbs. She stood still, her breathing even, her gaze fixed on the empty chair at the front where the lawyer would sit. To them, her silence was weakness, a sign she didn't belong. They couldn't see the steel beneath it, the way her stillness held a room without trying. The crowd grew louder as more guests arrived. Damon Wells, a former investor in a pinstripe suit, muttered to his wife, "Victor always had strays hanging around. This one's got no business here." His wife, dripping in emeralds, nodded, her eyes raking Elara's outfit. "No class," she said, her voice a stage whisper. "She's embarrassing the family just standing there." A distant cousin, Barnaby Croft, in a velvet blazer, called out, "Hey sweetheart, kitchen's that way." He pointed toward a side door, grinning as his friends clapped him on the back. Octavia Bellwether, an aunt twice removed, clucked her tongue. Really, someone should escort her out before the lawyer gets here. It's disrespectful to Victor's memory. Sabrina, her crimson dress swishing with every step, crossed the room toward Alara, her heels clicking like a countdown. She stopped inches away, towering over Alara's smaller frame, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You're in the wrong place, darling," she said, her voice loud enough to draw every eye. She reached out, flicking Alara's cardigan as if it were trash, her nails grazing the fabric with deliberate disdain. "This isn't a soup kitchen. Why don't you leave before you embarrass yourself further?" The crowd watched, none stepping in. Alara's hand stayed steady on her bag, but the invasion of her space felt like a violation. Sabrina's closeness was a calculated threat. The room's approval of Sabrina's aggression was palpable, their silence complicit in Alara's humiliation. Alara didn't move. Her eyes flicked briefly to the security camera in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. She knew it was live, feeding to a private server. Only 2 people could access it. One was her, the other wasn't here, not yet. As the attorney prepared to read, Barnaby slipped behind Alara, his velvet blazer brushing the wall. "Watch this," he whispered to his friends. He pulled a cocktail napkin from a nearby table, scribbled "charity case" in Sharpie, and tucked it into the strap of Alara's bag when she wasn't looking. The room noticed. Snickers spread like wildfire as people pointed at the note, its bold letters a brand on Alara's back. Penelope snapped another photo, her laughter barely contained, while Elise whispered, "She's a walking joke now." Alara stood unaware, her focus on the lawyer, but the crowd's glee was electric, their amusement a knife twisted in her dignity. Barnaby leaned back, grinning as Octavia muttered, "Serves her right for showing up like that." The prank wasn't just cruel. It was a spectacle designed to make Alara a fool for daring to exist among them. The lawyer, Mr. Percival Stone, referred to in the source as Grayson, entered at precisely 10 a.m. His gray suit was crisp, his briefcase heavy with secrets. He was older, with a face carved by decades of handling fortunes and feuds. The room hushed as he set his briefcase on the table. Damon Wells, referred to as Gerald Hayes in the source, stood, his pinstripe suit creasing, his voice booming like a judge delivering a verdict. "This woman's a fraud," he declared, his finger trembling with indignation. "Victor would never let someone like her near his estate. She's here to scam us, plain and simple." The room buzzed with agreement. His wife, her emeralds glinting, added, "She's probably got a fake ID in that rag of a bag." The accusation hung heavy, turning Alara into a criminal in their minds, her presence an offense they couldn't tolerate. Alara's gaze remained steady, but the weight of their judgment pressed down, each word a lash meant to strip her bare. Her silence only fueled their need to tear her apart. Stone cleared his throat. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Victor Caspian Vance, executed 3 years ago and verified as authentic." Murmurs rippled. Victor had vanished only 6 months ago. Sterling Preston impatiently demanded, "Let's get to it then. Who gets the keys to the kingdom?" Alara stayed still, her bag resting at her feet. She watched Stone's hands as he broke the seal, the crack of wax loud in the quiet room. The crowd leaned in, their eyes hungry for the $90 billion empire. Stone unfolded the paper, his voice deliberate. "I, Victor Caspian Vance, being of sound mind, declare this my final will." He paused. "To my family, colleagues and associates, I leave nothing but this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth." The room froze. Sterling's smile faltered. Penelope's phone slipped an inch. Damon's jaw tightened. Stone continued, "All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts and intellectual rights, are bequeathed to one person. The one who stood by me for no reason other than love. The one who never asked my net worth, never sought my name for status. My wife, Alara." A gasp tore through the room, sharp and jagged. Sterling barked a disbelieving laugh. "Wife? Victor wasn't married." Sabrina's hand flew to her mouth. Damon stood shouting, "This is absurd. Victor never mentioned a wife. It's a scam. Someone's forged the damn thing." Octavia Lillian clutched Barnaby's, Trevor's, arm, her voice shrill. She's not here, is she? Some gold digger we've never met, stealing what's ours. Stone held up a hand. The will is legal, signed and notarized. Supporting documents, marriage certificate, photographs, personal letters are available for verification. He produced a folder showing a photograph. Victor, younger, laughing, his arm around Alara in a simple white dress standing outside a courthouse. The date on the back read 7 years ago. The room erupted. Sterling slammed his fist on the table. This is insanity. Who is she? Penelope stood, shouting. Where's this Alara? Show her. Sabrina's voice cut through, venomous. If she's real, why is she not here, too ashamed to show her face? Alara stepped forward. Her movement was quiet, deliberate, like a tide turning. The silence was deafening. Sterling's mouth opened then closed. His gold tie suddenly garish. Damon sank back into his chair. Stone nodded to her. Mrs. Vance, he said, handing her the folder. She took it without a tremor. Her lips curved just a hint as if remembering the day it was taken. She faced the room. I didn't come for the money, she said, her voice clear, low like a bell through fog. I came to see who you were, who among you cared for Victor as a man, not a bank account, who'd mourn him, not his fortune. She paused, her hazel eyes sweeping the crowd, pinning each one without effort. You showed me exactly who you are. Sterling found his voice, shaky but defiant, gesturing at her dress. Victor Vance married to this? No offense, lady, but you look like you shop at thrift stores. I do, Alara said simply. Victor didn't care. He loved me for me, not for what I wore or what I owned. Can any of you say the same? Penelope snorted. Nice act, but I'm not buying it. A photo is not enough. Anyone can fake that. Damon Gerald nodded, demanding. She's right, we need more witnesses, records, something real. Stone produced the marriage license, dated 7 years ago, signed by both parties and 2 witnesses. A nurse named Sarah Ellis and a librarian, Michael Reed. He showed handwritten personal letters from Victor to Alara, verified by forensic analysis, bank records for joint private accounts. Finally, he pulled out a USB drive. Video footage from their wedding. The grainy footage played. The courthouse steps, Victor and Alara laughing as they kissed. The crowd's defiance crumbled. Sabrina stood, her voice trembling with rage. This is a setup, you planned this, didn't you? Tricking us into what? Looking bad. You're nobody. Victor would never marry someone like you. Alara let the anger hang. Then her voice grew colder. You're right about one thing, this was planned. Not to trick you, but to test you, to see if any of you cared enough to ask who I was before you mocked me, to see if you'd honor Victor's memory or just claw for his wealth. She stepped closer. You failed. All of you. Barnaby, Trevor, laughed nervously. Test? What is this, a game show? Come on, you can't be serious. His voice wavered as Alara's eyes met his. She reached into her bag, pulling out a remote. Victor isn't dead, she said, each word deliberate. He's alive and he's been watching you this whole time. She pressed the remote. A monitor on the wall clicked on. There sat Victor Caspian Vance, 42, lean, with hair streaked with gray. His blue eyes sharp as ever. He leaned back, his expression calm but unyielding, like a judge weighing souls. The feed was live. The timestamp ticked. April 15, 2025, 10:32 a.m. The room exploded in gasps, shouts, and disbelief. Sterling stumbled back, his tie askew. Penelope dropped her phone, the screen cracking on the marble. Damon's wife clutched his arm. Octavia's pearls snapped, beads scattering across the floor. Victor's voice, low and resonant, came through the monitor. You thought I was gone, you thought this was your chance to carve up my life like a cake. But I've been here, watching, listening, every word, every sneer, every lie. He confirmed Alara's warning. She warned me you'd show your true colors, she was right. Alara explained that Victor's plane vanishing was a cover, A way to step back to see who'd stay loyal and who'd turn. This was never about money, it was about truth. The grand hall's doors opened, and Victor walked in. He was real solid, his presence like a storm breaking. His suit was simple, no tie, his shoes scuffed from travel. He stopped beside Elara, his hand brushing hers, a quiet anchor. He faced the room. Elara designed this, the will, the reading, the cameras, all of it. She wanted to know who you were when you thought no one was watching. Who'd respect a stranger? Who'd show kindness? Who'd care about me, not my bank account? He paused. Not one of you passed. Victor locked onto Sterling Preston, whose gold tie was now a gaudy noose. You called my wife a maid, Victor said. His voice low but lethal, each word carving through the stunned silence. You laughed while she stood there alone, letting you show your true self. Did you think I wouldn't see? Sterling shrank, his bravado gone. You're not family, Sterling, you're a parasite, and I'm done feeding you. A guard appeared at Sterling's side. As he was led out, his protests were drowned by Victor's final words. She shouldn't have had to. You saw a woman you didn't recognize, and your first instinct was to tear her down. That's not family, that's not loyalty. Penelope, Clara, rushed forward. We're sorry, okay, we didn't mean it. Tell her, Victor, tell her to forgive us. Elara's face was stone. Her silence louder than any accusation. Victor shook his head. It's not about forgiveness, it's about consequences. He nodded to Stone, who pulled out an addendum. This is an addendum to the will, effective immediately. Anyone who insulted Elara today named in security footage, audio logs, or witness accounts is cut off. No shares, no properties, no contact. You're done. Stone read the names. Sterling Vance, Sabrina Vance, Penelope Hayes, Damon Wells, Octavia Bellwether, Barnaby Croft. Security guards moved in. Sterling shouted, You can't do this, I'm blood. But he was led out. Sabrina followed, her crimson dress trailing, her sobs echoing. Penelope clutched her cracked phone. Victor turned to her. You turned my wife into a meme, he said, his voice steady but searing, thinking your followers would cheer you on. But lies don't last, Penelope. Stone tapped his laptop, and Penelope's phone buzzed violently in her hand. Her social media empire of influence was collapsing live. Posts deleted, followers dropping by thousands, sponsors cutting ties with brutal efficiency. You're banned from my companies, my properties, my life, Victor said as a guard took her arm, her cracked phone slipping to the floor. The crowd's gasps were a chorus of awe. Elara stood beside Victor, her silence a crown as Penelope's digital throne crumbled. Her cruelty was her undoing. Damon's wife tried to argue, her emeralds flashing, but Victor cut her off. You called my wife classless, you don't get to stay. They left, heads bowed. Octavia's scattered pearls crunched underfoot, a fitting end to her pride. When the doors closed, only a handful of people remained. 3 people who'd stayed silent, who hadn't laughed or sneered. They were Sarah Ellis, the nurse from the wedding video, now older, her eyes wet with relief. Michael Reed, the librarian who'd nodded to Elara when she entered, recognizing her quietly. And Anna, a groundskeeper, who'd offered Elara water before the reading, no questions asked. Victor turned to them, his voice now softer. You saw her. You didn't judge. That's what family means. He looked at Elara, his hand finding hers again. You were right about all of it. Elara's gaze lingered on the empty chairs and the broken pearls. I didn't want to be right, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I wanted them to be better. She faced the 3 who remained, her eyes warm. Thank you for seeing me. Victor squeezed her hand, his voice low for her alone. You're more than they'll ever understand. She smiled, small but real, and leaned into him, her cardigan brushing his sleeve. The room was quiet now, the vultures gone, the truth laid bare. Elara didn't need the money, the estate, the empire. She'd never wanted it. She had only ever wanted Victor. Alive, whole, hers. And now, with the world stripped down to its bones, they stood together, unshaken. The hills outside glowed green under the April sky, and the cameras blinked off, their work done.